Hello, it's me again. I am back with another One Piece deck list. It's a really special one because it's probably my favorite leader of all time I have yet played. I said that Lim was really fun, and Lim got me 6th place in a 20-man local. This time I have a deck list for an 13-man local, where I got 2nd. And I got 2nd with a very special deck that is definitely gonna get a lot of good support in EBO2, which is Vegapunk. I gone with Vegapunk 3-1. Because we were 13 means that I had one free game, which was the first round. So the first time I didn't in the first round I didn't play, but in the second round I lost against Blackbeard, and in the third round I won against Smoker, and in the fourth round I destroyed Dofi. Um, and yeah, this is what this deck really shines, is against those card draw heavy decks, and those decks that are just trying to go wide, where you just can go wider because your leader has the ability to just push out a bunch of good triggers, a bunch of good characters, and it's always quite nice to play. And inside the archetype of Egghead, it is really good as a leader itself. And if you don't know what Vegapunk does, he is a 5k 2 life only leader, but and he can also not attack. These are some heavy restrictions, like probably the heaviest restrictions a leader like this can have. But why does he have this restriction? I mean, if we look at the ability, he says activate main once per turn. We can pay 1 Dawn, and if we do that, we can select up to one Egghead type card with a cost of 5 or less from our hand, and we can either play it or put it on top of our life cards face up. So he either heals us every turn or he cheats something out every turn. And this is what makes this deck so strong. You can just flood the board with a lot of characters, especially in like later turns. Cheating out, putting out like 2 to 3 characters is the usual, and this deck does it the best, I think. So I have a deck list, and it is OP9, and it helped me in a 13-man local going 3-1 with one free game. So let's just go over the deck list, and we start obviously with the most important part, which are the searchers. I have some really cool searchers in this deck. The first searcher is pretty much very self-explanatory. It's the archetype searcher. It's 4 copies of Lilith. Lilith is the archetype searcher for this deck. It makes sense that we play 4 because you wanna have 4. You don't play her turn 1 usually, because turn 1 you usually want to cheat out like something like a Shaka or something like an Atlas, and then turn 2 you want to play her or play the other searcher we play, and then cheat out another character or put something in life if you feel threatened. So she's more of a turn 2 play, but she is pretty much the best searcher for this deck. This will change with the new Vegapunk coming out in EB2. The EB2 Vegapunk lets us search and cheat out a character in one fell swoop, which is insane, and it has blocker. So the Vegapunk searcher will most likely gonna replace probably 2 of those Liliths, because it also has counter, so that's also a massive upside. But um, um, if you look at the card, it says on play. We look at the top 5. We look at the top 5 cards of our deck, and then reveal one Egghead type card other than Lilith, and add it to our hand, and place the rest at the bottom of our deck in any order. And on trigger, we can play, if our leader is Vegapunk, we can play her. This is what makes her so strong, because we can also just cheat her into life and then trigger her off life, which is really nice. But what is the other searcher we play? We play 3 copies of the new Dureishi from OP9. And this is probably my best tech in this game, in this deck list, because Dureishi is so strong for Vegapunk. A 3-cost event, I mean, yeah, sure, but it says on main, we look at the top 5 cards of a deck and reveal 2 cards with trigger other than Dureishi itself, and get them to our hand and place the rest at the bottom of the deck in any order. On trigger, we draw 1, but that doesn't matter. We played this out because we can search 2 cards and fill our hand massively with this. We only play 3 because this is really bricky. If we get this when we don't need it, or if we just only draw into Drashis, it's not that nice. It's not that good. But this searches basically 90% of our deck, because pretty much 90% of our deck is only triggers, which makes sense because Vegapunk is a trigger deck, and you only want to play it as a trigger deck. You don't want to play it anything else. But there's multiple variants. This is more of like a mid game, not really control heavy, but I would say it's just mid game beatdown. That's what this deck is good in, and this is the version I play. And Drashis just help you massively get your combos going, get your lines going for the mid game, and this is probably the best searcher in the deck other than Lilith. Lilith is searchable, or Lilith is at least egghead typing and plays herself out on trigger. This is non-egghead typing, so you can search it with any other searchable card, not even itself, but it's just a good card to draw. So if you get it, especially turn 2, it's your best searcher. And that's why we play 3 of them. So yeah, 7 searchers in this deck. Let's go over our 2Ks. I mean, 2Ks are very self-explanatory. We go from best to best to worst, obviously. So the best 2K in the deck is obviously 4 copies of is obviously Edison. We play 4 copies, self-explanatory. Great 2K, 4/5 body, 2K counter, plays himself out on trigger if we have Vegapunk as leader, and on play if we have 2 or less life cards, we can draw 2, trash 2. Usually happens all the time. That's why we play it. And the other 2K is also self-explanatory. Is for Frankie's. Frankie's is the second best and the only other searchable 2K for this deck. Now that we have Drashi, we could also play other 2Ks that are non-egghead type with trigger, so we can search it off the Drashis, but I don't think we need that. Vegapunk is good enough with 8 2Ks. Yeah, it's the minimal amount, but you don't want to play, or you don't want to have too many 2Ks, in my opinion. There's so many other cards you want to find other than 2Ks in this deck, and 2Ks is just the icing on top of the cake that we have searchable ones. Frankie great, 4/5 body with 2K counter, and on trigger, if we have 1 or we can draw a card, and if we have 1 or less life, we play him. Good in any generic deck with yellow. So yeah, 8 2Ks. Let's go to our blockers. We only run 4. We run 4 blockers. We run, obviously, the only blocker that is searchable in this deck is Shaka. Shaka blocker, great blocker, 5/6 blocker with 1K counter, and if our leader is Vegapunk, we play him out. Always great to push into life, or always great to get into a trash and then get into play with the Irequisa event card. But yeah, that's it. 4 blockers. There's also a character you like to cheat out turn 1, I think, if you go first. So that's usually what you want to do. And the next card is some card draw. We have, or the only real card draw card is Bonnie. 4 Bonnies, obviously. Bonnie is a great card for this deck. 3/4 with 1K counter. And on Dawn times 1, our turn, once per turn, when a card is removed from our opponent's life, we draw 2, trash 1. Great hand filler card. Usually comes up quite a lot, but also the trigger is nice. Trigger is draw 2, trash 1. Also good if we trigger her out. Always nice to see. So yeah, 4 cards in this regard. Let's go to our egghead. Let's go to the rest of our egghead engine type cards. Type characters. From best to worst, obviously. We start with the most important card in this deck to put either into life or just have it on the field. Is 4 of Rocket Luffy. Rocket Luffy, incredibly strong card. We know everything what it does. This destroys Dofi insanely easily, and that's why I like to play this card as a 4 of in this deck. 5/6 with 1K counter, and on main, so it even goes through Blackbeard, which is good, which is great. We can trash this character, and if we have 2 or less life, we KO one of our opponents cost 4 or less characters and then draw a card. Great of filling our hand up. And then trigger, KO one of our opponent's characters of cost 4 or less as well. So this is board checking. So this goes through boards. but also draws us cards if it's on the field, and on trigger just goes through boards, and sometimes we need that, especially if we want to get rid of, like, for something like a Weevil or something against Dofi. This is great in destroying these. Next card, we play 3 of S-Snake. S-Snake also good card, 5/6 with 1k counter, stays on play up to one of our opponent's characters with a cost of 6 or less other than Monkey Luffy cannot attack until the end of our opponent's next turn. Great card. Great card to play, great card to have. And the trigger is activate this card's on play effect. Also nice. Sadly, it does not activate on trigger when you play against Blackbead and they black hold you, or they negated your leader effect, negated your on play effects. So that is the only downside on this. The next best card to have, and obviously one of the best characters in the deck and the best attack in this deck, is Atlas, because Atlas doesn't have any on plays. This is what makes it strong. Atlas, great card, 5/6 with 1k counter. Says if we have less life cards than our opponent, this character cannot be KO'd in battle. Great attribute. Just swing with it freely without needing to worry about this card getting KO'd in battle. Still in effect, but that doesn't usually matter because we like our opponent expending their resources for this card because it's a must remove usually. And on trigger, if our leader's Vegapunk, we play her. Again, as I said, great card. One of the best cards in this deck. Next, 3 off is 3 Pythagoras. It's a good card. This is probably the first card that gets out for the new Vegapunks. For the new Vegapunk blockers. But 5/6 with 1k counter and has on KO. If we have 2 or less life, we play up to 1 egghead type character with cost of 4 or less from our trash rested. It's good. It's fine. It doesn't really gets us too far ahead because most of our characters are 5 cost. That's why the new Vegapunk is better. But yeah, we still like seeing this card. And if our leader is Vegapunk, we play him. Also, still great trigger. We like to see that. Next, 2 off. We play 2 of the Egghead Namis. Why only 2? Because this card can be inherently bad for us. Because our deck does not really go wide and big on hand size usually. This card is usually not that important. Yes, it pops a 5, but this is not why we play. This is not only why we play her. But what is she? She's a 5/5 with 1k counter. On play, we may trash a card with trigger from our hand and then KO opponent's characters with cost 5 or less. Then if we have 3 or less cards in our hand, we draw 1. Again, this can inherently hurt us if we have more than 4 cards. So we want to be quite careful with this card because it's only a 5k body. Usually doesn't really do much other than give us the effect, and on trigger also activates cards on play, but it only gives us the effect really off as much, so we want to be a little bit more mindful. Though the next card that we have is definitely better in that regard, not in terms of effect, but in terms of attack, is 2 S Sharks. Many people don't like this card. I recently just noticed how strong this actually is against, like, wall decks like Rosinante or something. Because it's a 4/5 with 1k counter, and it says Dawn ×1. When attacking, your opponent cannot activate blockers during this battle, which is really good. They need to counter this or remove this card. This is a must remove usually for our opponent, especially if they have a lot of blockers on the field. This card can really fuck up their game plan. For example, against Green Uta, just attacking with this, with 3 Dawn attached, going 8k unblockable, is usually quite disruptive. So it's quite a good card to get. And then on trigger, we may trash a card, and if we have 2 or less life, we play him. Also nice. Plays him out for almost free. So yeah, that's all of our Egghead type cards. That's like, what, about 20 to 30, 2, 4, 7, 10, 13, 17 cards, 17 Egghead cards. Let's go to the non-Egghead cards. There's only 2 different ones. And we go in terms of cost here. First, we start off with 2 Rush Aces from ST13. Good card. 5/7. On play, we have 2 less life. Carried against Rush. It's unsearchable, but it's a good card. It usually gets our game planned forward, especially into late game. And then the other card we run is a 3-off. We reduced it from 4 to 3. Is 3 Lilins from ST20 from the Katakuri starter deck. Also good card. 6/7, no counter, which is pretty bad. But on play, we may trash 1 card, and then our opponent chooses one of the following effects. Either they trash 2 cards from their hand, which is really good, especially against Dofi or Uta. They usually like to trash cards, so getting cards out of their hand is good. And then, or the other effect is trash 1 card from the top of our opponent's life cards. So if they don't trash cards from their hand, we just get 1 life. And if we have Bonnie on the field, that just gets our gameplay forward as more, which is nice. And it's the only other 7k and the only other big character in this deck. Many people, if they go late game control, run Yamatos and Katakuris and whatever. But I like running this because I'm more focusing onto the mid game. I want to get my opponent or kill my opponent before it even goes hard into late game. So against something like a Blackbeard, you usually want to cheat out as many characters as possible because they usually don't really hit into life until they have enough cards in the trash to play out a 10k Burgess and then chain it with the 12k blocker Blackbeards. So finding this card early is quite nice against 5-life decks, and then just cheating out characters as many characters out as possible is just really good, because they cannot do anything about our triggers, and if they chain Blackbeards, we lose. That's where this deck fails. If they get too hard into late game and chain Blackbeard effects to turn off our leader effect, and then hit us for 3 times 12, there's no recovering from that. So it's good that we get some more mid-game control support. So yeah, 5 non-egghead cards. Next is the rest of the deck, which are 5 cards. We have 3 events and 2 stages. Our event cards are obviously the I Request Our Help. I teased it before with the Shaka plays. One of the best cards you can have. 1 cost counter event. It says on counter, if we have 2 or less life, up to one of our characters or leaders gains plus 3k power during this battle. But that's not why we play it. We play it because of the trigger. The trigger says play up to 1 of your egghead type character cards with cost 5 or less from our trash. And that's good. That's exactly what we want. We can play Ashaka, we can play Pythagoras, we can play Atlas, we can play pretty much any other egghead card that we run. And that's just good in getting our game plan forward. And then the stage is obviously Egghead stage. We run 2. Egghead stage is good, especially because we can search it with 2 different cards, with Drashi and with Lilith. And this is usually where we find it the most. And stage is always good, because if we have 3 or less life, at the end of our turn, if we have 3 or less life, we can set up to 1 Egghead type character with a cost of 5 or less as active. So that means we can swing with Ashaka and then restand him with the event, with the stage, which is really nice. So keeps our game plan, protects our board, protects our life. That's really all this really does. And that's it. That's the rest of the 5 cards, 2 stages, 3 events. And that is the Vegapunk OP9 Vegapunk decklist. One of the most fun decks in the game. Like, if you want to have a cheap fun deck, you cannot go wrong with Vegapunk. The only real expensive card in this deck is the Egghead Nami, because they are like $12 or so, because they're, first of all, they're Namis, and second of all, they're quite hard to get because everybody wants them. So yeah, these are the only expensive cards, but if you don't run 4, it shouldn't be too much of a problem. The rest is actually also all quite easy to get. Yeah, and again, one of the most fun decks, one of the strongest mid-game decks, in my opinion. For mid-game, this is actually really good in dealing with our opponent's board and dealing with all of the stuff they can throw at us. And now with the S-Sharks putting in there, just turning off blockers is really nice. So yeah, Vegapunk. That's the deck list. I hope you enjoyed. I will be back in OP10 when I have some new deck lists for you. Just some cool new deck lists. I have a Sabo deck list planned a red-yellow Sabo with the new ST21, as well as a mono green Odyssey Lim deck, and I have probably another deck planned, but we will see. I will obviously make videos of the new decks and how I did in locals with it, but yeah, my going second Vegapunk list. Great card, great deck, fun deck, always is a blast. The only real bad matchup you have is against Blackbeard, because it turns off your on plays and you rely mostly on plays in this deck. So this is the only hard matchup for you. The other matchups are quite even, and then you easily destroy something like Dofi, Blue Dofi, because Blue Dofi can do nothing against your popping 4 costs every time. And if you find Rayquazars and your Luffy's quite early, what are they gonna do? So yeah. Until next time.